has ended. T-Transit initiate explode, cleansing the digital world. But even such divine powers will never reach the deep depths of the dark area. It is time for us to move, and soon I will take over everything, and all of it shall be mine to consume. Let the demon's gate open.
It's definitely nice to bring Beelzemon back in action with the new card support in BT 2.5, and let's go ahead and show you guys my current updated version. Starting with the Digi-Egg cards, 4 copies of the advanced deck set Yamon, just the mill cards every time we try to attack. One neat trick you actually get to do is when you swing with impmon normally, you don't actually get its when attacking effect because it's not a wizard or demon lord trait. But you can use the warping impmon as you attack first, digivolve into Beelzemon, resolve all the when digivolving effects, and then resolve that when attacking effect last because the Beelzemon now is a demon lord trait to mill those extra 2 cards. And that is by sequencing that when attacking effect last, where it does see the Beelzemon attacking at that point. And the reason why that's important is because sometimes milling those extra 2 cards can help you reach magic numbers for Beelzemon to get the maximum benefits of effects, or even actually chain other effects as you mill more cards from the top of your deck. Moving on to rookies, I always recommend running 4 copies of the advanced deck set impmon just because we mentioned it earlier, it can help you warp into Beelzemon. Its inherent effect is great to get rid of the opponent's floodgate rookies as you climb up and as you mill. And then there's a BT19 impmon, which I'm running 3 copies of. Although this guy costs you 4 memory to hard play, you actually normally want to play it out by effects, whether with the new option card Bonds of True Love, Purple Scramble, EX2 Beelzemon when you mill it, or even Beelzemon X itself. When you play it out, you get to immediately play out one of your Tamers from the trash. By doing that for free, you can easily just bridge into your other combos. You can play the new I Am Mako to help you warp into Beelzemon. You can play the old I Am Mako to help you further search and set up combo pieces as you mill with your strategies. And the nice thing with its inheritable of providing you retaliation is great when you digivolve up into a Wizardmon, Wizard X to gain blocker, and then synergize with Bowmon as a matter of fact, as you get to mill more cards, set up the Beelzemon in your trash, trade into your opponent's Digimon with retaliation, and then play out a Beelzemon back, which is really, really cool. Then of course, you always must include the one-of copy of the EX2 impmon, which helps you turbo mill. Every time you see a mill into this card, you just want to continue mill additional 3 cards, and just to keep in mind, you can always choose between 1 to 3 whenever you mill it out, but generally I go for 3 just because you can continue to ramp up more cards in your trash. And that is exactly why you generally want to stack it to the top of your deck. Otherwise, it has that on play helping you search out I Am Mako and Beelzemon, which is a fantastic secondary effect. Providing you extra DP with its inheritable is really everything you want to have in a Beelzemon deck. I'll be honest with you guys, I personally really hope that this card came off the restriction list based on the most recent announcements, but after talking to several other Beelzemon enthusiasts, I gotta admit that if this card ever came back to 4, it might just make the deck way too powerful and unfair. And then to round off for the rest of the rookies, I'm playing the 3 copies of impmon X just to help us recur anything that we need from the trash, that we can grab anything within the line. It's inheritable, providing us extra trashing when we're attacking as well is always fantastic. And ideally, you want to be digivolving this on top of your impmons when you can. That's it for level 3s. Let's talk about level 4s. Still got the 4 copies of the promo Wizardmon, just because when you mill it, you get to gain a memory. If you ever digivolve into your stack, you can stack any card that you want back to the top of your deck with its when attacking effect, really giving you the perfect setup. And then for the other level 4, of course, I'm running the 4 copies of its X antibody version, Wizardmon X. Being able to trash as we digivolve up is what we want to do. If we digivolve on top of Wizardmon, we gain blocker instead, and its inherent effect, just like most cards we've seen so far, mill 2 as you attack. That's it for level 4s. Now let's talk about level 5s. Like always, I definitely recommend running 4 copies of the advanced deck set Bowmon, just because when you digivolve into it, you instantly mill 3, and then it gains that on deletion effect for 1 whole turn. If there's 10 or more cards in the trash, you get to play a Beelzemon back. This includes for every card that's within the stack once it's deleted, which includes to that 10 count, because once everything is in the trash, it counts all of it together, and as long as you have 10 or more, you always get to play that Beelzemon. And it's always fantastic to see this card early, because having that Beelzemon for free instantly gives you a lot of return value. If you play the starter deck one, you can continuously gain memory. If you play the new EX6 one, you can instantly rush and de-digivolve against your opponents as well. Like I mentioned before, one of the newest combos you can now synergize is with the BT19 impmon to gain retaliation, go into a wizard, and then into wizard X to gain blocker so that it can stop your opponent's attacks if they ever attack into you, trade into their body, or proactively attack with it while you have the promo wizard within the stack, so then you can set up your Beelzemon to be at the top and mill it in case if you don't have it initially. Or even synergize with Ayamako so that you can stack a Beelzemon to the top of your deck, ensuring that you mill it off, so then whenever you do reach that 10 count, you can always easily have a option of Beelzemon to play back. And with its inherent effect to provide you extra 2k DP buff during your turn as long as you're climbing into a Beelzemon. Next, I'm also teching in one copy of the BT10 Beelzemon. Similar idea with the other Beelzemon because you continue to actually mill 3 cards, but this one is always consistent, where as long as you're attacking, you get to trash the top 3, and whenever it gets deleted itself, as long as it's 10 or more cards in trash, you get to play a Beelzemon back, and this effect is always constant. But the downside is it doesn't provide you any inheritable, so it's always the secondary one that I want to get into just because it doesn't instantly mill me cards. And then to round off for the rest of the level 5s, I run one copy of his X antibody version. When you Digivolve into it, you get to return the X antibody option back from your trash and add it to your hand. And this is really important because you mill so much, often enough times, the X antibody option does end up there. Just like the regular Beelzemon that I'm running a 4 of, you get to instantly mill the top 3 cards of your deck when you Digivolve into it. But if the regular Beelzemon or X antibody was actually in its sources to begin with, you actually delete one of your opponent's level 4 or lower Digimon instead. And then it's inheritable, just like the other Beelzemon, extra DP buff during your turn to ensure that your Beelzemon can swing over your opponent's Digimon or security. That's it for level 5s. Now let's talk about level 6s, which is all going to be our Beelzemons. I'm running 2 copies of the advanced deck set one, just so that we can instantly trash the top 4 cards of our deck when we Digivolve into it. We get to gain memory back for every 10 cards in trash, and this is always an all turns effect once per turn as well. And then with his last effect during our turn, we can gain extra security to deal damage that we need. Often enough, you gather more than 20 cards in trash, this becomes a 2-cost Evo, and as you combo and synergize with your other effects with Wizard, Death Slinger, or Ayamako, you can gain even more memory out of it. And then I'm running 2 copies of the EX6 Beelzemon. Similar concept, when you play or Digivolve this card, you get to instantly mill the top 4. And if there's 10 or more cards in your trash, you get to de-Digivolve 2 on one of your opponent's Digimon. Having that access to soft removal is fantastic to synergize and basically play around aces or against many big stack decks to weaken your opponent's Digimon, but ultimately it has Rush, allowing you to attack immediately, which can synergize with some other combos which I'll show you guys later on. Lastly, with its all turns effect would actually never come up for this particular deck, just because it's specifically designed for the 7 Great Demon Lords build so that you can tuck additional sources underneath your gate. But with all the other benefits which I mentioned earlier about this card, makes it worthwhile to be included for this build anyways. Then to round off for the rest of level 6s, always gotta include the Beelzemon X antibody, which I'm running 2 copies of. The whole intention of this card is to help you finish, trash your opponent's security as you mill more cards. Every 10 you have, you trash your opponent's security as soon as you Digivolve into it. You wanna make sure you have Beelzemon underneath it or an X antibody in order to achieve that. Generally, this is going to be your finishing move so they can swing for game with it, which is how you close games with this deck. Otherwise, if it ever stays longer, you always have that on deletion capability where you can play a impmon back from your trash for free. I find this effect more applicable in today's metagame just because the opponent has a lot of counters and responses while you're trying to finish the game off. So then you can actually play out the new BT19 impmon, instantly play out the new BT19 Ayamako, and as long as you have the sufficient memory, you can always warp back into another Beelzemon, which is going to be your EX6 Rush one to make an additional attack, or go into another Beelz X afterwards. That's it for level 6s. Now let's talk about level 7s, starting with the all-new BT19 Beelzemon Blast Mode Ace. That's the one I want to talk about, which I'm running as a one-off. This provides the deck now counter ability against your opponents, as you can blast Digivolve, delete something that's level 6 or lower. If you have 10 or more cards in trash, you can basically delete anything you want. And this is where its when attacking effect really comes in, as it helps you recycle 10 cards back from the trash to place them on the top of your deck so you can stack specifically and plan for your next plays moving forward, so that you can then trash your opponent's top card security to either finish them off or continue to play. Then lastly, I'm still including 1 copy of the advanced deck set Blast Mode, just because when we mill it, we can pop something potentially, but we generally want to use it as an additional finisher so that we can unsuspend and swing for game. That's it for all of our Digimon. Now let's talk about Tamers. I'm running 4 copies of the advanced deck set Ayamako. The reason is because you want to be able to search as much as possible, find your pieces, climb up your stack. You guys realize our ratios when it comes to low 4s, 5s are not a lot, so it's really important to grab our specific Wizardmons that we need. Wizard X, Beelzemon if we need as well, to continue to climb up. And whenever we actually Digivolve, we get to stack our cards to the top of the deck to gain that memory and synergize with our milling effects. The more copies of you establish on the board, even better, just because you can continue to gain even more memory and continue to play and combo off multiple times. And then for the new BT19 Ayamako, I'm running them as a one-off. Gaining that memory at the start of main as long as the opponent has a Digimon on the board is fantastic. And now it gives you another capability to warp your impmons into Beelzemon as long as there's 20 or more cards in trash and paying the 4 costs. Being able to select to go into any Beelzemon that you want is fantastic. You can go into the advanced deck set 1 to mill further, gain memory back and still keep your turn and gain security attack +1, or you can always go into the rush version and then you can always instantly swing for game if it's still your turn. The reason why I run it as a one-off is because you tend to mill it out into the trash anyways, and ideally you want to play it out for free off of the new BT19 Impmon's effect instead. But I have considered bumping them up to 2 and reducing the older one by 3, which I'll play around and switch the ratios every now and then. That's it for Tamers. Now let's talk about options. Let's start off with the removal options where I'm playing 2 copies of Rival's Barrage. Whenever we mill it, we get to set it and it becomes an instant wild card for us to grab anything that we want back from trash. Its effect being able to delete stuff with the highest level on the board. Same with a security effect, which is a security bomb. And then there's Death Slinger so that we can gain additional memory when we mill it. I'm playing 2 copies of that as well, but we also get to scale our deletion starting from a level 4, and every 10 cards in our trash, we get to increase our level by 1, easily going up to 6 or even 7 in the later stages of the game. And then 1 copy of 7-fold cluster just to remove the opponent's lowest level Digimon on the play. It does cost 7 memory, which is quite a lot to pay, which is why we want to set it up in the trash so that when we go into Beelzemon X, we can always tuck this card back to the bottom of our deck to use that effect to get rid of the opponent's Digimon as we go for the game-winning attack. And the reason why I run fewer copies of these cards nowadays is just to reduce the amount of bricking, because there's a lot of level 6s and option cards that don't really benefit you in the early stages of the game as Beelzemon. I'm trying to reduce that risk, just because you really need to ramp up into your stack as quickly as possible to keep up with the fast environment of the current metagame. Therefore, I'd rather prioritize those slots to include additional copies of Ayamako and Wisdom Training to help me increase my search efficiency. Speaking of Wisdom Training, I'm running 3 copies of that along with 1 copy of Purple Scramble just as generic staples. And then there's a new option card for the archetype, Bonds of True Love, which I'm running 1 copy of. When you mill it, you get to set it in the battle area so they can use the delay effect at the start of the turn to play out an Impmon from the trash as long as you have no Digimon. And that effect is almost pretty much another Purple Scramble within itself, and that is exactly the reason why I run 1 of each, just because I can get the best of both worlds to meet against different conditions and scenarios when I need to use them for different applications. Otherwise, by paying 3 memory costs with its main effect, you get to instantly trash the top 2 cards of your deck and then set it to the battle area. And of course, there's always Calling from Darkness, which is just a fantastic purple staple to help us grab additional pieces back that we need from the trash, and also gives us self-deletion effects, which we can synergize with Beelzemon to play Beelzemon back, or even Beelzemon X to play Impmon back when we need to at times if our opponent is trying to play around us. Then to round up for the rest of the cards, like I mentioned earlier, I got 1 copy of the X antibody option cards. There are 2 usages on how you can synergize with your warping combos. First is with the starter deck Impmon. You want to tuck it underneath, and as you attack and warp into a Beelzemon, you can then easily follow up with a Beelzemon X antibody. Secondly, whenever you play out your EX6 Rush Beelzemon, you want to slide it underneath so you can attack with it, and then Digivolve into X antibody to trash the remaining cards to go for the finishing blow. And if our opponent ever checks into security, we get to gain a memory and then add it to our hand, which certainly has saved me quite a number of games. Tech choices and other cards that you guys can be including for this deck as well. Other than just the Yaomon as your egg, you guys can also include the starter deck 6 Pagumon, which gives you on deletion, you get to mill 2. This card is exceptionally good with the BT2 Impmon if you ever want to trash as much as possible in the early stages of the game, as well as if you ever choose to maximize your BT10 Beelzemon instead. Because in situations when you have 10 or more cards in trash set up already with the ST14 Beelzemon set up there, when Beelzemon gets deleted, you want to play that Beelzemon out first, and then you get to resolve the Pagumon on deletion inherit effect to trash 2, and then Beelzemon will gain the memory since it is all turns effect, which can potentially disrupt your opponent's turn or even steal the turn back to you. And then there's the BT6 Impmon. Whenever you play it out, trash a card from hand to recycle any 7 Great Demon Lord from the trash and add it back to your hand, which is going to be your Beelzemon. The Witch one from the advanced deck set is also just as good as a secondary level 4, aside from just relying on Wizard and Wizard X, just to instantly mill 3 when you Digivolve into it and gain that extra DP buffs with his inheritable, just like Beelzemon. You guys may have noticed that I'm not running the EX2 Beelzemon anymore just because I feel like deck space is really tight to include level 6s. But if you prefer a strategy that really synergizes with the impmon so that you can continuously use its on-play effects, especially when it comes to the BT19 one, this is a great inclusion so that you can always play it out for free easily and continue to trash more stuff as you attack and you digivolve as well if you ever go into it. And the more cards you rack up in your trash, the higher level you get to delete on your opponent's side as well. And this one's only a 3 cost to digivolve, which makes it pretty cheap to get into. And I also want to quickly talk about the newer BT19 Beelzemon, which I think is probably one of the weakest one compared to all the other wider selections of Beelzemon that we have. Just because when you digivolve or you play out this guy, you only trash the top 2 cards of your deck and you only gain blocker that lasts until 1 turn. But I would make an argument that its all turns effect is actually pretty neat because whenever you mill a card from your hand, you get to instantly delete one of your opponent's Digimon that's level 5 or lower. So if you guys ever want to include it, I would recommend it no more than a 1 of. And for the other tech that I like to mention, there's also the Beelzemon from the advanced deck set itself. Just because the more cards you have in trash, you get to reduce its play cost, which ideally you just want to hard drop it because you get to play out impmons so that they can gain rush and then they can attack and warp. And all of that is really intended to synergize with the opponent's turn effect. When your opponent's Digimon attacks, you get to mill 1 from the top of your deck. Chances are you might be able to mill something that gains you a memory so that you can potentially limit your opponent's turn or even pass it back to you. And then you instantly play an Impmon that's ready to attack the following as well. And alternatively, with other level 7s, aside from the blast modes that you can be running, there's always the rune mode that you can include just because it's a very strong purple staple top end to get into, just to lock down your opponents and then secure your win con the following turn. Alright, combos and how to play the all-new updated Beelzemon deck. Starting with your mulligan hand, you want to see your impmons so that you can digivolve, wisdom trainings, ayamakos to search and grab your pieces, climb up into Wizard X, use Wizardmon to gain memory or stack and continue to cycle and draw more cards. Getting into the advanced deck set Balmon is priority to set up your level 5 and climb up so that you can go into the advanced deck set Beelzemon to gain a lot of memory and deal damage. Otherwise, set up the EX6 Beelzemon in your trash or digivolve into it to control the board. Eventually, once you rack up a lot of cards in your trash, going into Beelzemon X Antibody to help finish off games, as well as Blast Mode or even Blast Mode Ace to counter against your opponent's plays. Starting with the very first combo, I'm going to show you guys the traditional ways of stack building with Beelzemon and milling cards as you climb up to set up cards in your trash as firepower and additional resources that you can utilize in the later stages of the game and to achieve your win condition. You want to start off with an Impmon, Wisdom Training, Ayamako, and 1 memory is all you need to go off with your turn. We're going to go ahead and push out this Impmon and digivolve into Impmon X. If this was ever in the mid stage of the game, or if we ever have cards in the trash that we can grab back, this is where we get to choose to use Impmon's when digivolving effect to trash an option card from our hand and grab anything that we need within the line, within the archetype as well. Next, I'm going to use Wisdom Training to digivolve into Wizardmon. Similar to Impmon X, the idea is just to rack up inheritables that we can stack for later combos so that we can synergize all together and mill as much as we can, and also to choose what we want to mill. Now we're going to digivolve for 0 into Wizard X. Wizard X is not going to mill the top 2 cards of our deck because there is Wizardmon in the sources when we digivolve into it. Therefore, it's going to gain blocker lasting until the end of the opponent's turn. Now I'm going to digivolve into Balmon for 3 costs. Now it's really important to make sure that you're always drawing when you're digivolving as you climb up before you resolve any of your when digivolving combos. That is because you want to see what cards you draw into that can probably help you and stack certain cards to the top of your deck. This is where we can take 2 routes, the defensive route or the offensive route. Let's begin talking about the defensive strategy instead. What we're going to do, because we digivolve into a purple Digimon, we're going to use Ayamaku's effect first before resolving any of the Balmon's effect. Here, we want to make sure that we're putting a Beelzemon to the top of our deck, and then we get to gain a memory. Now with Balmon's when digivolving effect, we'll trash the top 3 cards of our deck. Then it's going to gain the other when digivolving effect, where on deletion, if there's 10 or more cards in the trash, we get to play a Beelzemon back. That way, we set it up perfectly to have that Beelzemon. What this actually does is that establishes a blocker with retaliation against the opponents if they ever try to attack into us with a larger Digimon. And let's just say if they do during their turn, we're going to block and have itself deleted. Now with Balmon's on deletion effect, it actually counts for every card that are in the trash as soon as it's deleted, meaning all these cards that enter the trash will also add up to the 10 count. At this moment, we should perfectly have 10 cards in trash so that we can go ahead and play out the Beelzemon. By playing out the Beelzemon, we get to trash another top 4 cards of our deck, potentially finding something like a Death Slinger or Wizardmon to gain memory, which could disrupt the opponent's turn. But also, since we have 10 or more cards in trash at the moment, we get to de-digivolve 2 on the opponent's Digimon as well. And by establishing the EX6 Beelzemon on the board, we have a level 6 that we can work with, and if the opponent ever tries to continue to attack into us, we can threat a Blast Mode Ace against them. So reverting back to the situation where we just Digivolve into Beelzemon, this time I'm going to show you guys the offensive side of the strategy as we want to make attacks and keep turn and mill even more cards. Just like before, we're going to use Iron Mako first before we use any when Digivolving effects of the Beelzemon. We're going to want to stack a card, whether it's going to be a promo wizard or the Death Slinger, to make sure that we gain that additional memory. Iron Mako is going to gain one first, and then now we're going to use Beelzemon's effect to Digivolve so that we get to trash the top 3. Because Death Slinger has been milled, we'll gain that extra memory back, keeping our turn here. At this point, we can choose to attack into one of the opponent's suspended Digimon that's bigger because we have retail, or we can swing into the opponent's security. But the most important thing is to make sure we have to establish a Beelzemon in the trash so that we can play it out with the on deletion floating effect. So in this case, let's go ahead and attack into the opponent's security and pressure for some damage. Generally, this is where we want to resolve our when attacking effects, and it's really important that we want to make sure that we want to resolve them correctly in the right order. In order to maximize the hits of potentially seeing a Beelzemon, I actually would recommend resolving these when attacking effects bottom up. So work your way from the Yamon, where you get to mill the top 2 cards of your deck. Then we're going to mill another 2 with ImpX. You guys see what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to see if there is actually a Beelzemon first. Here at this moment, I don't see Beelzemon just yet. That means I want to make sure I want to set one up. This is why I'm going to use the promo Wizardmon to stack the Beelzemon by revealing it and put it to the top of the deck. Now, with Wizardmon X Antibody finally, we will mill the other 2 cards. So now we've ensured and set up that Beelzemon there. Meaning, if the Beelzemon ever did trade and retaliate against the opponent's Digimon, or if we swing to security and get deleted, we certainly have this Beelzemon that we can play out. Since I played out EX6 Beelzemon, I have the option to actually even swing over the opponent's Digimon after de-digivolving them to take them down, or go into security. Otherwise, I can actually even Digivolve into Beelzemon X early just for 1 cost, putting the opponent to 1 memory to work with and trashing 1 security on their side. And the whole idea of having that level 6 on the board is because you're constantly threatening the Blast Mode Ace against your opponents. If your opponent attacks into us, we're going to go ahead and Digivolve into the Blast Mode Ace, and since we have 10 or more cards in our trash, we basically get to delete anything. If we don't go into Blast Mode Ace and the opponent deletes our Beelzemon X Antibody, we can always play an Impmon back from the trash as well for free. And then with this new Impmon's effect, can resolve and then play out another Iron Mako since we only have 1 or fewer Tamers. Next, I want to show you guys the warping combo where you can potentially finish off against your opponents assuming they have 4 or fewer security. To set up, all you need is 20 or more cards in trash with at least the advanced deck set Beelzemon in there, as well as the advanced deck set Impmon ready to go, plus Iron Mako. 1 memory is all you need. Go ahead and push out the Impmon, and we're going to go ahead and attack with it. Using its when attacking effect, since we have 20 or more cards in trash, we get to warp Digivolve into Beelzemon from our trash for 3 costs, ignoring its Digivolution requirements. Make sure to draw for Digivolving, and then use Iron Mako to suspend where we want to place a Wizardmon or Death Slinger so that we can gain additional memory. Iron Mako is in game 1. Now, with the when Digivolving effect of Beelzemon is the newest trigger, we get to trash the top 4 cards of our deck. Since we trash 4 and Wizardmon, we're going to gain 1 first. And because we have at least 20 cards in our trash at this moment, we're going to use its other effect to gain 2 memory. And because we trash cards from our deck this turn, we also gain security attack +1. Finally, we actually also get to resolve Yamon's when attacking effect, because if this Digimon is a Wizard or Demon Lord trait, which Beelzemon is at this moment in time, we actually get to mill another 2 if we need to, depending on if we want to meet certain numbers to get up to potentially 30 or even more. Beelzemon is then going to go into the opponent's security for 2 checks at 12k. Assuming it survives, this is where we then are going to Digivolve into Beelzemon X Antibody. With Beelzemon X Antibody effect, we get to trash the top 2 cards of opponent's security because we have 20. Assuming if we have 30, we get to trash 3, and we can even 5-0 against the opponents. If we ever have 7 full cluster in the trash, make sure to use that as well to delete the opponent's Digimon at the same time. Once again, because we have 20 or more cards in the trash, we can now Digivolve into the classic Blast mode from the advanced starter deck as well. And with its effect, since we have 20 more, we're going to gain 3 memory when Digivolving, and we get to unsuspend, and the opponent has 0 security at this moment, so we can go ahead and use it to finish the game off. Now I want to show you guys a newer warping combo that this deck can now pull off with the newer BT19 cards. You want to have Iron Mako set up from the older one as well. Bonds of True Love or Purple Scramble will work as long as they pretty much serve you the same purpose to play out the Impmon from trash. So let's go ahead and say we have Bonds of True Love. Here at the start of turn, because we don't have a Digimon on the board and we have 1 memory, we can use this delay effect to play out the Impmon from our trash. We're going to play out the BT19 Impmon, and with its on play effect, because we have 1 or fewer Tamers, we get to play a purple Tamer with 4 costs or less, which is going to be the new Iron Mako from BT19 as well. This is still at the start of our turn before we drew or unsuspended. So we're going to draw for turn now. hatch our egg, and proceed to go into main phase. Assuming the opponent has a Digimon on the board, the new Ayamako is going to gain us a memory at the start of that main phase. Like always, we want to make sure that we're meeting the threshold of having 20 cards in our trash, as this is a late game combo. Now we're going to use Ayamako with his main effect. By suspending them, we actually get to Digivolve into the EX6 Beelzemon specifically for the 4-cost Warping as well. Draw for Digivolving and making sure that we always use Ayamako's effect as well first, so that we want to stack a memory gaining card to gain a memory off Ayamako. Beelzemon is going to mill a 4. Because there is Wizardmon milled out, we get to gain a memory, so we still keep our turn here. This is where we want to utilize X antibody. Since Beelzemon has Rush, we can go ahead and attack with it, and on the when attacking effect, use X antibody to Digivolve into Beelzemon X for the 1 cost, and then depending on how many cards that we have in trash, either it's going to be at least 20 or potentially even 30, we get to trash the rest, and if the opponent has less security than that, this is going to be swing in for game. Or alternatively, if we don't finish the game, putting down the opponent to low security, this is here where we're once again threatening the potential Beelzemon Blast Mode Ace if the opponent ever tries to attack into us the turn afterwards. If you want to see more 7th grade Demon Lords gameplay, make sure to watch the latest epic clash of Battle Vault, where they face off against the Royal Knights. In some of those episodes, you guys can even find special discount codes for the AVAULT store to grab your very own Demon's Gate playmat. So make sure to head on over there, and I appreciate the support. Thank you guys so much for watching. You guys have a great day, great night, wherever you are. And this is AVAULT signing